Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Truss. I'm here with Joe Akers, Ray Winstone, and Colin Knox. Please do check out our documentary NOX, the Rob Knox Story, about the murder of my friend, Rob Knox, who appeared as Marcus Belby in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Now streaming on the London Independent Film Festival. Bollocks that one up, didn't I?
Just shows we're normal people.
we film
fast and loose with the word normal there, right?
We're just film loving. Just film loving.
Hi, and welcome to the London Independent Film Festival 2021. So we are very fortunate to be joined today by Aaron, Colin, Ray, and Joe to tell us more about the film. So to tell us a little bit more about NOX, the Rob Knox Story. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, everyone will agree it's a fantastic documentary, and it's also just really important, and it really has the relatable side of crime and what the families have to deal with, and I think it's a really important documentary. So Aaron, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to make this documentary and how the project came about.
Well, the project predates even my involvement with it in some ways, as Colin will probably tell you in a second, is that Colin had this idea way before, I can't remember what year, but Colin, do you want to explain just how this sort of started?
Yeah, that's a good starting point. If we could go back prior to Aaron getting involved and anyone else, I wanted to produce a documentary about knife crime, but also to show the love of my child and what the family went through, but primarily about knife crime. We produced with another director a documentary that, when I looked at it, because it's the first one you've ever done, for me personally, I went, that's good. But when I look back at the documentary prior to Aaron Truss, I thought, this doesn't look right. So I spoke to my colleague at BBC South East. He put me in contact with another woman at BBC, and her forte was documentaries. And we had 1 hour conversation, and she spoke for 55 minutes. She gave me a lot of information about the way that the documentary should go and not where it is. And I thought that good information. So I sat back and thought, she just echoed what I thought about the rendition prior to Aaron Truss. The rendition I was looking at, it didn't look right. And I sent that to Aaron, and to join the dots up, if Aaron can take up the conversation after he was sent the first rendition, what he actually done to make it where it is today. Aaron, it's up to you now, mate.
Thanks, bud. So yeah, I looked at this rendition that was made, and it just had no soul. It wasn't something that I personally was invested in, seeing as I knew Rob and I was watching this thing. And at this point, I've been working in London as an editor for so many years, and I kind of just thought I could do something with this. There's enough material here, and a few interviews have been done, not enough, but I think I would like the chance to do this. I'd never worked on a feature. I'd worked on some short stuff like for Hatton Garden and Limehouse Golem and some other stuff, and I thought it's just like my kind of bread and butter, really. So I basically nagged Colin, please let me do it. I think I can do it, and I set in like a 3-minute edit of what I could do. And I think that was when both Colin and Rob's mother, Sally, said, yeah, go for it. And that was the starting point, because I really wanted to weave Rob's colourful personality into the documentary. I didn't want this to be a film about, a true crime through and through with mystery and red herrings and, DNA evidence and narrators and things like that. I didn't want any of that at all. I wanted to tell a story that was very clear cut about someone who had everything going for him at such a young age. And I wanted to explore, Harry Potter. And I mean, I don't really know what it's like to go for auditions in the sense of Harry Potter and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure an audience would be fascinated to learn what Rob had to go through, with Warner Brothers and things like that, King Arthur and so forth. And I wanted that in the documentary. I thought that was integral, because in order to give a shit about someone who loses their life in the narrative, I really want them to warm to this guy. And luckily we had all this footage from Colin's video camera holidays and things like that, and all these things. We could put Rob in the film in that sense, and that was very important to me. And I think the vision was less true crime and just, as Ray would say, tell it how it is. You don't need to glitz and glam it up. What happened is what happened.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's really the personal element, isn't it, rather than just the facts and
Yeah, there are knife crime films out that glorify knife crime. You get lots of young kids in the street and having a hustle and bustle and fighting. That's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to show a person that was real. He had a lifestyle and a future, and then there was a demise. And people need to know that, because people's lives are relevant. You can't cheapen a life. And so I've gone through this for many, many years, and it's been hard. So the intent was to get something out there that makes people sit up and listen, be aware that just because you hear it every day, there's one murder today and there's another one tomorrow, but you'd never have the collective figure. And then when we spoke a couple of months ago, Aaron and myself, when the figure came out a year or 18 months ago, it's 2,462. I mean, what? It's now 2,700 now or something?
2,737.
Yeah. So what you don't get a grasp of, or a grip of, is the number. Because you drip fed, someone was killed today. You say, oh, another person, that's horrible. And another one was killed today. You only see them as a drip fed 111. But when you look back to the point when Rob was killed to this day, nearly getting on close to 3,000 people have lost their lives. And if that ripples out to hundreds of thousands of people affected. It's a knock-on effect, and all those are victims.
I think as well, just to sort of follow on from what you were just saying there, Colin, as well, is you can't kind of diminish what a life means. And Rob, I think what kind of Aaron was saying as well about making the film and putting Rob's essence into the film was he was very much a person that when he walked into a room, everybody noticed. He was this huge character, and you kind of get a sense of that as well. You get this sense that he was this fun, energetic, interesting kind of there was a glow about him, and you just sort of we wanted to kind of put that across, because when you met him, you immediately saw that.
Yeah, that definitely comes across. You definitely get a sense of that in the film.
I mean, if you really think about what we're talking about here, at the moment we've got a pandemic going on, and I think the figure of people who have died in the past year through a pandemic is something like 130,000 people. Is that correct? And if you weigh up the over 3,000 people who have been stabbed and lost their lives, and the family members that are connected with that are all victims themselves, it tells you that knife crime is a pandemic on its own. We have a pandemic, and that which affects hundreds of thousands of people, but nothing's been done about it. I haven't seen any change in the government over the past 10 years. They might huff and puff about it, but there's very, very little being done about it. And if we can call a coronavirus a pandemic, I believe we should be calling this a pandemic too. Something is very, very wrong.
I think in the past, governments have tried to do something, but the something hasn't changed the course of the way knife crime is still carrying on. It's okay, leave it, it'll go away. It will go away. Well, it hasn't gone away. And no one has the right to bear arms in England. We're not at war. No one has the right to pick a knife up and put it into another person's body, knowing that they will kill them. And Rob was one of those victims. He was a victim of someone thought that he was a Charlie big boy, giving it large, and he thought that the way he can answer a question is to stab someone. Not with one knife, but with two knives. That guy went home, picked up 2 kitchen knives, and came back with an intent. And his intent was to kill someone. How does someone think about that? It's beyond me. And I've lost a son that I love dearly. I had 2 sons, and I loved him dearly. And this is the character of Rob. When at a certain point in my life, I left the matrimonial home. That's another thing. But when I left, I gave him a gin bottle of money, full of coins that you collect as parents. You remember you put in like gin bottles? And I said to him, there you go, boy. This is yours. Spend it as you wish. I thought we were going to buy some Nikes or whatever it is. He went down to Barclays Bank and put every money into an account, Children in Africa.
Wow.
He could have spent every penny on himself, but he put every penny in that account for Children in Africa. And that was the type of person he was.
Wow. Amazing. So tell us a little bit more about how you got together with all of you, Aaron, about your process for getting this balance right between it being such an awful tragedy and also showing Rob as a person and creating a documentary that is really important to see. So yeah, just tell us a little bit more about how you worked on getting that balance right.
Well, I think the process was actually easier than it seemed. It did seem very daunting at first. I think, you know, when I had the footage of what was shot before, I kind of identified what we needed to tell the full story. I think Ray was one of the first people I got in touch with, knowing that I wanted this to be more than just a documentary. And I know that Ray's connection with the foundation, we did a short film years ago together with the foundation. I wanted to explore the Warner Brothers connection with Harry Potter and things like that, get some of Rob's friends back. And behind the scenes, I pretty much didn't really need to convince anyone to do it. It was pretty much, I mean, Joe will attest to this probably, that we had the idea in mind and people were working on it for nothing. They were giving their time for free. A lot of people worked on this film just because they have kids. That was one thing I discovered quite early on. You know, we had a drone operator, we had someone in, you know, doing the music and all these things on set doing location stuff. They got involved just because they have kids and they're worried about the safety of their kids. So they believed in the cause and what we were trying to achieve. And obviously Joe got involved. Joe knew Rob years ago, and Joe is also the lead singer of a very cool band called Taxi Joe, and I wrote them in to write an original soundtrack, which he'll get on to later, I'm sure. But just the influx of love and just dedication to the project, people who didn't even know Rob, was just absolutely amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it brought out the best in people, I think.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah, totally. I must admit that once I finished with the first rendition and Aaron came on board, he changed the shape of the world for me. He was producing something time and time again. He sent me so many renditions. I swear to you, every time I watched it, I cried my eyes out, because there's a lot of love in there, a lot of feeling in there, and it got better and better and better. And the end result that we have is the best that I think Aaron could have done with the material, because it's a very horrible theme, murder. For the son, knife crime. It's not getting looked at by any government agencies. Well, I've got another documentary to do about speaking to politicians and stuff. But I think Aaron has done a remarkable job with all the crew. Ray, thank you. Joe, thank you. Taxi Joe, thank you. I mean, Ray stood up so many times in my life. I've been to Ray's house. He's a lovely person, very accommodating and very supporting. And Ray, thank you very much, mate. Because your profile is huge, and I really respect that. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure. A pleasure.
Right.
And I know that you had two daughters, and when you first come on board with Colt, you were talking about you're worried about your daughters being in London on London streets. And
absolutely, my nephew was stabbed, attacked many years ago. Was lucky enough to survive it. So, as a family, we've been through that. We didn't lose him, thank God, but it was touch and go with us for a while. So I know what that is. I know what that vibe is. You know.
Yeah.
And so it was a no-brainer in a way to be involved, because something needs to be said and something needs to be done. Yeah. I just hope this documentary is seen and understood for what it is. You know.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray, for that endorsement. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Ray, tell us a little bit more. You're such you really passionate about this subject. So tell us more about all the what you've been doing and how you've been involved with this and your experience and the process.
Well, really, all the main work's been done by the boys and their families. It's all I've done is what I do is I talk, and you use your experiences from the past. I grew up as a kid in the East End, you know, and which was supposed to be known as kind of the Badlands at the time. Don't go down the East End, but very rarely you heard of crimes such as this, you know, knife crimes. Maybe because the media was different in those days, and you know we didn't have that much access to it. But at the same time, it occurred to me that it's getting worse and worse and worse. And being personally involved myself through family, it makes you much more aware, I guess, in a way. But it seems to me it's like I spoke to you earlier on about the Alan Clark film Elephant, you know, and the way newspapers work, and it's just what effects of life. You know, Alan Clark made a film years ago about assassination, you know, and it's about 15 murders in this short film, and they all last for about 30 seconds to a minute, and you actually see the event. And the first one actually shocks you. The second one is still getting there. By the time you get to the fifth one, you've seen it, and it doesn't become boring. It just becomes monotonous, you know, as the way a newspaper does. You know, the first one that we kind of hear about is on the front page, and then it digresses down to the second page, and before you know where you are, it's in small print, if in the paper at all. It's that kind of old news. Yeah. You know, let's move on to something else. And it seems to me why it's becoming old news, the crime is becoming enlarged. You know, there is more and more and more about it. We hear about the ones that are on the news and in the newspapers. What about the ones we don't hear about? I mean, they just become a statistic in the end of the day. And so for me, it's the fact of putting it out there again and making people aware that this is still going on, and it's endangering socially the way we go about our lives. I watched something on the TV the other night, you know, this young girl that got murdered walking through the park by a police officer. And they were talking to women about the fear of a woman walking in the dark in the street. On our streets, a young kid cannot go to the pub because you fear. I have fear every time my girls go out. They're going to a party or they're going down the road. I don't know what's going to happen at the party, and that's no way to live. And I believe there has to be a big change. And I think the government's always banging on about how they can help socially change our lives. Well, there's a start. There is a start. Let's do something about it. Let's talk about it. I don't hear them talking about it in Parliament. They talk about trivial things, you know. Yeah. This is a very important part of our life and our children's lives for the future.
Life and death.
I think, though,
absolutely.
I think, though, Ray, you touched on a very good point about the news is great news today. It's a headline. Tomorrow it's second page, and after that it's third page, and after that you can wrap the paper, your chips up in that paper, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think if a person that was involved in as an MP or a government or a well-known actor or actress that lost a love, it will be splash front page again, red headline, headline. But we shouldn't need that to react to the problem.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We need to. I think Jack Straw many years ago, he said that we would increase the life sentence for someone for killing someone to 25 years. I thought, well, that's a clever move, because the Labour Party was in power at the time before the Conservatives took over.
Yeah.
But the kicking doesn't come into 20 years down the line financially. So they've done nothing proactively. And you said, well, we're going to put him in prison for longer.
Yeah.
Well,
surely we should try and stop the problem before it occurs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is why we've all been collective in supporting Aaron in his efforts to produce a documentary that I feel is right in Rob's memory, right in the fact that we're trying to address knife crime, the fact that we're trying to get things changed. Things are changing.
Well, Colin, you know what Aaron was saying about the easiest thing was to actually make the documentary, but actually the toughest thing was finding distribution for the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, you just answer the question here. It's easy to make a film. It's easy to do that because there's enough people that care socially about the events, what happened to your boy. But then there's not enough people who actually are interested in distributing the documentary. So where do we go?
Well, maybe it's because the fact that it's not red headline type of documentary. It doesn't. We don't go to the fight. We don't see people getting killed, or
no.
We tell the true story about someone. And but equally, Aaron, Joe, Taxi Joe, yourself, and all those people that supported Aaron in post-production and editing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic job. And I think we're taking it as far as we can. We now need people to sit up and listen and make a judgment and make a change.
Yeah. I think what I mean is that there's enough people in society that do care.
Yes.
But the people who have the power to do something about it, they're lacking behind, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're following the trail of the people that do care.
Yeah.
And those that make decisions are actually saying, do you know what? Should we do that?
Yeah.
Well, yes, you should make it.
Absolutely.
No-brainer.
Yeah.
So what is happening with the film now? What's next for what are you trying to do with it at the moment, Aaron? Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing.
Well, we have had a lot of interest in the documentary. It's kind of because it doesn't follow specifically a set type. It's not part of a series. It's not something that was designed in a way to, again, be formulaic in its way. I mean, the only thing that's probably formulaic is the fact that we got it down to probably 50 minutes. And it's...
Go on. Going to the front. Sorry.
All right. That is the fact that it's 50 minutes and, it's got a BBC hour runtime, basically. So at the moment, we are in talks with a specific distributor, which I can't mention at the moment. But at the moment, it is our goal to get it out internationally. And Warner Brothers have been really amazing working with us to clear certain stuff, especially with Harry Potter. But it's
been a long old road as well, isn't it? I mean, we started shooting the new stuff in the summer of 2018.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
It probably has.
Oh,
yeah. So it has been a long. It feels like it happened yesterday, but honestly, Joe and Ray are right. It has been so long trying to, because it's been a weird process as well, having to start with the editing, laying the narrative down, sort of laying down the blueprint of what we wanted to do, then jump in the car or jump on a train, get to where we need to go. And that was a crazy year. But
we slept about all over the place, didn't we?
If we did, to be honest. But and the idea that we've now got a finished product that we want to get out there that doesn't fit the conventional mold, I can imagine some people sort of being like, oh, hot potato kind of thing. But it is what it is. I'm not here pandering to broadcasters, trying to change things. We made it the way we wanted to make it because it's the most honest way we could, talk about knife crime. It's Rob's story, but the story can apply to anyone.
Absolutely.
People my age and Joe's age are now having kids. They're starting their own families and they're bringing new people into the world. And this film, in my mind, wasn't intentionally made for kids who carry knives or people who carry knives. It's more of a warning for the parents of those who have kids, because obviously you can't be with them all the time. And obviously they're going to be worried sick about where their kids are and what they're up to, who they're getting involved with, the dangers that are out there.
Aaron, you're so right. Can I just interrupt you? Because I always do this. Whenever we have a phone call, I always interrupt you when we speak, because when I thought I have to speak about it. Because 2 weeks before Rob died, the last conversation I had, because I didn't live with him anymore, the last conversation I had was one of warning. I knew we used to live in Leafy Sidcup, just inside the M25 on the east side or southeast side of London. And I said to him, when you go, because he's now, he then was able to drink at that age, become old enough to drink. I said, when you go out there, just be aware there are people carrying knives. I always thought that Rob, being a young person, may end up in a road accident rather than being murdered as a demise to his life. I thought that if ever Rob could have been taken away from us, it may have been through a road accident, because young guys drive fast. I did say to him, be wary out there, not knowing what was going to happen in a few weeks' time, that Rob was taken from me, from our family, not because of a road accident, by someone, stupid person, carrying a knife that took his life. So you're absolutely right, Aaron.
I was about to mention the fact that you had warned Rob like 2 weeks prior. So it's just, you don't think about these kind of things. And why should people think about these types of things? Like Ray was saying earlier about, it appears in the newspapers, so often that it just becomes white noise.
Yeah.
Like before Rob died, when there was a knife crime story in the news, I didn't really pay that much attention to it because there was no personal connection. I hadn't experienced. I mean, I was a bit worried about going out at night. I was working at Sainsbury's on night shifts and things. So I wasn't in a rough area, but it still made you think twice, and
just be aware.
It was just, the film itself had to act like a lighthouse, a warning. To parents, essentially. That's what it is.
Even as well, when you actually hear the story from somebody's point of view that was there, like when we were interviewing Jamie and Nick, that whole process was so emotionally charged, wasn't it? It was hard to be in that room at that point. I remember when we were doing Jamie's interview, there was 4 of us there and we were all crying. Do you know what I mean? It was because it was real. Like you could see him reliving it, and we were right there with him. And even though we'd been sort of involved with the foundation and we'd known Rob and we'd kind of seen all the fallout happen since it happened, going back to that night with Jamie running through it, it just sort of it brought it to our minds right to the front. We'd never thought about it. I mean, I definitely hadn't thought about it in those terms because I wasn't there. You know, I hadn't seen it, and so actually being kind of told black and white, this is what happened, and not only that, this is how it felt, and this is what I was going through. You know, facts are facts.
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm a very rude person, right? That when I saw renditions coming through from Aaron, the one where Jamie sat on his seat speaking to camera, Jamie does not normally weep.
No.
He's a strong. He keeps his feelings inside. But when I saw Jamie well up, I'm about to do it now. For Jamie to do that, that was a very deep emotional state of mind that he was in. He lost his brother. They used to do everything together. Hardcore, taekwondo, acting, sing. They'd done everything together and they were friends. And my mum always said to me, when you have a child, make sure your son is not only your son, he's also your friend. So I like to be a father, but a friend also, and show them love. And you can see that coming through in Jamie's eyes when the camera was on him. He's speaking to camera, and he's speaking from an emotion, and he's not an emotional person per se. But I could see the deep loss that he felt. And you're so right, Joe. You're so right. That was an emotional shot for your crew at the time.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add to that, sorry, is that before I knew Jamie and I had been friends for many years, you know, after Rob passed, and we'd never really spoken about it. And I knew going into this, I was going to have to sit down with him and talk to him about this, open this wound up. And before I came on board, there were interviews of Jamie, and I wasn't really convinced Jamie felt comfortable talking about it. And I knew I really need to get out everything that happened. A lot of the boys who were there that night on May 23rd in 2008, a lot of them didn't want to speak to me just because they didn't want to open up those old wounds, you know, and I totally respect that. I'm not trying to sensationalize what happened. I wasn't looking for, you know, that kind of that angle, but it was very hard. I remember inviting Jamie, Nick Jones, Andrew Dormer, Charlie Grimley, some of the boys that were there that night, round to my house, and we just had a pizza, and we sat in this room where I am now, just on the floor having a pizza, laughing about movies and having a drink or whatever. And then I mentioned it and brought it up, and to my surprise, and I don't think they'll mind me saying this because I have the utmost respect for them and everything they went through, but it occurred to me and it occurred to them, it was the first time they'd actually openly spoken about what happened that night to each other, probably since the court case back in 2009. And
that was hard.
Yeah, and it felt like a huge weight had been lifted, and they said it felt therapeutic, and they said, you know, a lot of them didn't really want to discuss it with Jamie because he was Rob's brother, but just suddenly the air cleared, and just to witness that over a slice of pizza and just, you know, giving each other a hug and whatnot and finally getting it out, that was a huge step. You know, screw the documentary, for these guys to sit around and finally just be like, I can talk about it. That was amazing. And eventually that led to me being able to interview Jamie. He felt comfortable with me asking about it. Nick Jones, who opened up about it and his experiences in court as well. Same with Andrew Dormer. But again, it was so hard, that process, and it was gut-wrenching not to be able to press pause on the camera and to ask Jamie if he wanted 5 minutes, but I knew I had to keep that camera rolling because it was the truth.
You touched on the court case. We as a family were allowed to sit in the well of the court. We had the killer of my son 15 feet away, and you got the young guys, they're only like 17, 18, sat in the dock with a barrister that's trying to catch them out. And all they were trying to do was tell the truth. And the barristers are trying to make them out as liars. And I felt that so hard that I've got this person to my left, and very smug and doing that and waving to the gallery like he was like a celebrity. Sorry, a celebrity. And in the court, you have emotions where when the prosecution stands up, you feel pretty good. They're saying a lot of stuff that's absolutely true. When a defence magistrate stands up, you go on the down dip because they're saying lots of things that are wrong. You know they're wrong, but they have to say it. I know about judiciary, there's a process of law. They have to go through, they've got the right to defend the defendant, blah, blah, blah. But every day was a helter-skelter, honestly. When the prosecution spoke, you felt good. We'd be on the way to justice. And then when defence spoke, you think, that doesn't sound right. And all of a sudden you start, and it's very hard, honestly, very hard to attend that court session for, I think, nearly 2 weeks. Hearing what the defence are trying to say, but you know that what the truth was. And it's probably one of the worst times of my life that I'm sitting that close to that person that stuck a knife in my son's body. And he's saying, I'd done it in self-defense. Hello, you went home, got 2 kitchen knives. You came back and stuck at least one of them into my son's chest 5 times. He had 5 stab wounds and 1 pierced his aorta. And I had to sit through that. And when the jury gave the verdict, you couldn't believe the what they call it, the when you express yourself with such, I don't know, it's like a release, yeah, like euphoric. Oh yes, he's been found guilty, because it was unanimously, it was completely, and to go through that, knowing that, I mean, the man that killed my son, when he was arrested at the scene, he was put into a van. He's more worried about a boxing fight that had been on TV, and he asked, how did it go? And he'd just been told that he just killed someone, but he's more interested in a boxing fight that was on TV. And I just like, I can't comprehend this. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. But
no, that's interesting what you said about the court case, because I mean that whole section of the film, it does feel quite tense, doesn't it? It's got that kind of, you're sort of over the edge of something, because it did feel like when everybody was talking about it, it did feel like there's a chance he might get away with this, even though he was caught at the scene with 2 knives. There was a sense that everybody felt like he might be able to walk, and that kind of, you know, it wasn't a done deal. And
do you know why that is so true? Because the prosecution has to prove. Defence only have to put doubt. If they put doubt into the jury, then he could be acquitted. So the defence don't have to prove anything. They just trying to put lots of flares out there to say just to cloud the jury's mind. When they go, actually, I'm not sure. No, he's not guilty. So when I talk about the helter-skelter, when the prosecution spoke, it made a lot of sense. So he's on a high. But when he heard the defence speak, they were throwing these little bombshells up there just to get into the jury's mind to make sure they couldn't make a decision, a unanimous decision, you know, beyond reasonable doubt. And every time you heard defence speak, they're trying to put doubt into the jury's mind. Oh, well, that's what they do. I accept that. That's just the way the law is of the land. It's allowed to go on. But you had to go through that helter-skelter every day. And it's a very, very emotional place to be. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. I mean, it was a very emotional process making the film anyway. It wasn't like putting something together how we would normally approach it. Would you say, Aaron? I mean, it's
what I found fascinating was our viewpoints. To be honest, I remember we spoke to Ray, and there was a lot of anger, and there was a lot of frustration because the one thing that we kept ending on was why is this still happening? Why?
Yeah.
And the four of us in a room couldn't really answer that one. It's not really up to us to do that, but we can only do our best with this movie. And Joe quite rightly pointed out in the sort of latter stages of the documentary that we need some more viewpoints and we need to explore the wider picture. And that's when we reached out to Lives Not Knives in Croydon, who are a charity that basically they've got their own space in a shopping mall, and they get kids in and they talk about sexual health. They try and get them apprenticeships, or even just play a bit of Xbox or whatever. Just get them in so they're off the streets and making friends. In a way, a youth club, but like Ray says, you don't get many of them anymore. And we also went to the MIDI Music Centre, and we listened to the amazing Wazzy Brewster hold these hard talks, they called them, with the community.
Yeah.
And the knife crime that was happening on, and so passionate, and it just blew our minds that we might be talking about a story from 13 years ago, but it's happening now. It's live streaming. It's not stopped. There isn't a pause button on this thing.
Yeah,
it's still going on. You're meeting people who have been affected by knife crime, and there's this shared trauma that you end up, that sort of envelops you with these people, and it's just it just influenced the way the movie kind of twist. It was almost like it was writing itself, and we were just harnessing that on an Adobe Premiere timeline.
We just hung on, didn't we? We just hung on and
we had to see where the next call would take us. Basically, that's how.
Can I shift the mood now, because we've spoken a lot, but I'm going to reach out to some people now that are actually here. Ray, Joe, and yourself. Ray, thank you very much for coming on board and adding a voice that is what they call it has gravitas. Your voice has gravitas. I thank you for all that you've done in the past and now currently doing. Joe, the theme tune, when that swing door went in the hospital and you produced that song, tune that went with that graphic, that just blew me away, mate. It was so apt. A swing door, it doesn't say too much, but when you introduced the song that you produced for the documentary, it was absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And Aaron, everything you've done, mate, top man. Top man.
God bless you, Colin. Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. Very appreciate that.
Wow. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Joe.
So Colin said it.
I'm going to come back just to Joe for a bit. I just want to hear a bit more about this soundtrack and the process you went through to come up with that. Was that a process that you worked on together, or how did you come up with that?
It was weird. So when Aaron kind of initially, because I was kind of obviously working in a kind of exec producer capacity in the film with Aaron, but Aaron said, like, I want this to have like a proper soundtrack, which is a bit, it's not really done in documentaries, but he asked me if me and the other guys from Taxi Joe, so Louis Morgan and David Belayera, we could write some stuff. And I was doing some singing for Lorne Balfe, the composer. So I kind of asked his advice on how we could, how we could go about this. And he basically he's been throughout the whole thing. He was really great in kind of listening back and giving feedback and stuff. he just said, just keep sending your editor, which for us was Aaron, so it was handy that the editor was also director, but it was keep sending your editor demos that he can edit to. And so the three of us got to work. We just started churning out little ideas and little bits, little 30-second, 1-minute pieces, and just chucking them over to Aaron. And sometimes we did things together, and sometimes it was just something that came to me on the toilet one night, and then I, disappear for an hour in my bedroom.
We didn't use those ones, the toilet ones. They didn't make.
We didn't use the toilet. No.
Yeah, you went a bit too experimental, in my opinion.
But yeah, so we were. He was kind of editing to the demos, and then we kind of got to a point where there were a few gaps, or it was like, can you redo this and can you do that? And so then it was like, we've got this sequence, write something for it, like what Colin said about the swing door in the hospital moment in this piece that we wrote called "He's Gone." Yeah, and it's kind of the moment that you find out that Robert passed, and then when we were re-editing it, we had to then go back, and I had all of the kind of the stems, the different parts for these long pieces that we'd done to cover the night that it happened and the court case and all of that, and we had to condense it down. It was a much longer edit initially, so then I had all these stems, and I remember kind of going back over, and I was editing the music to the video, so kind of basically doing with the music what Aaron did with the image with our initial demo. So it kind of just sort of, I don't know, we did it in so many different ways. Yeah, there was any way that you could imagine we had to do it, we kind of did it that way somehow.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because I remember you came up with the theme tune and it blew me away. I think it was David's creation as well. But I remember that specifically. I was one night really late, and I was working on the sequence where Rob passed away in hospital, and there was no music at all. And normally as an editor, you use other soundtracks to sort of help guide the mood, and then you take it out and say to the composer, right, do something like that. But in this case, I went in with a complete blank slate and sent the sequence over to Joe. So we kind of switched roles almost, and I was sending him stuff and saying, tell me what you think of this. And then he came back with that track, Colin. And when I just laid it on the sequence in the editing software, and it just slayed me. And I think I had to stop. I knew if it didn't make me cry, then I probably failed as an editor. I probably failed to tell the story correctly.
I cried every time, mate. I cried.
Yeah, and it's just vocals, isn't it, Joe? It's just
it's all just me and Louis tracked up a million times.
It's incredible.
We made it quiet. I wanted it to have that kind of, because it's such a raw thing. It was supposed to be. I mean, the idea behind it initially was just one person crying alone, and then joined by all the tears of everybody else as they gradually find out. It was the sense of like sonically doing what was actually happening in the images of the community, the family, the friends, all gathering together to sort of cry in harmony. And there was like a almost like a church kind of element to it, because it needed to be kind of visceral and something kind of like an ancient kind of vibe, something that gets you right in the core of your humanity, really.
You're in the gut as well, to be honest.
Yeah. Ray, can I at some point this video is going to stop this interview. Ray, if you, because you are you have gravitas. If you had a word to give to politicians or society, what strong words can you give to try and stop this knife crime?
This knife crime. Well, one comes to mind is get your finger out right away. This has been going on far too long, and someone who actually, these people represent us, the people. They're supposed to, and the people, I believe, are crying out for something to be done about this. Now, whether that's done in terms of sentences, or we get right down to the roots of this, to our society, and nip it in the bud. The bud's a big bud at the moment,
Yeah.
But if we just let it go on as it is, which we seem to be doing at the moment, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And we're going to end up like LA. We're on our way to it now. You know, LA, New York gangs of people roaming the streets. The idea of, you know, in America, you look at America, they've got this the right to bear arms, you know, pick up a gun, you can have a gun in your house. And all we keep hearing about is people getting shot in shopping centres. We haven't got gun crime here into that level because we don't have a bear to arms law. We don't have legally have guns in our homes. You know, if you live on a farm, you might have a shotgun to go and shoot rabbits, but that's about it.
Yeah.
That's the same for knives. People who use knives, who carry knives, if knife should be in the kitchen, or if you're a professional man, you carry a knife, you know, it's at your place of work.
Yeah.
There is no need for anyone to carry a knife on their person. And anyone caught carrying a knife on the streets has got to get 5 years straight away. In my mind, you're banged up. There's no reason in this world why you should carry a knife.
Absolutely.
You know, 5 years straight away. Yeah. And you have the free rule thing. If you're caught 3 times, then you go away for life. Because that's what you're carrying a knife around, and that's what you're going to end up doing, taking someone else's life. So for me, you've got to be tough. The laws have got to be tough.
So it's proactivity.
Oh, absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt. I mean, it's some great people out there doing work for this in the communities. You know, they're not sponsored by any government means. You know, we used to have youth clubs when we were kids, and now it's you've got the boxing clubs that are doing the same things. There's a little firm, I believe, in South London with gloves on, knives down. Boxing gloves, you know, it's boxing gloves up, I think it's called, and knives down, and they're doing some great work in the community. But I've done
some of my boxing in youth clubs, right? I've done some of my boxing in youth clubs.
Yeah, and that's it. This is where great men are our mentors, you know. But not every kid has access to that. Yeah. So, and some kids are not lucky enough to have a mum and dad who can guide them in the right way. Yeah. I mean, it is a social problem.
Yeah.
But it's a social problem that needs to be addressed. Yeah. And the people that run our country, who are supposed to represent us, ain't doing nothing about it. And they've got to do something about it immediately. You know?
I endorse that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, here at the London Independent Film Festival, we hope we can help to get the word out there, and hopefully people will watch the film, people will see that it's really important, and hopefully it will make a bit of a difference. Yeah,
thank you.
Right track.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Very, very warm welcome from us at the festival, and also from our audiences, I'm sure, as well. So once again, thank you guys for being here. And to our audiences, if you want to come and connect with us further, we're all over social media. So come and chat to us on there, and also come and connect with the filmmakers. This is a really important topic, so get involved. And once again, thank you to you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your interest.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care, boys.
See you later.
Thanks, Ray.
Mate.
Pleasure. Bye. Bye-bye.
Love to you all.
Bye-bye.